The results from this year's Global Technology Audit Risks Survey, conducted by Protiviti and the Institute of Internal Auditors, reveal a complex and multifaceted landscape of technology risks. Cybersecurity is the top priority, and by a wide margin. AI is an emerging risk with gaps in organizational preparedness and audit proficiency. The talent gap in IT is a growing concern, and data privacy is a growing regulatory challenge. This is Kevin Donahue, Senior Director with Protiviti, welcoming you to a new edition of Powerful Insights. Protiviti and the IIA recently published a research report on the results of this survey entitled Navigating a Technology Risk-Filled Horizon. This report is available on the Protiviti and IIA websites. For this episode, I spoke with Protiviti Managing Directors Lindsay, Gleeson, and Angelo Poulikakos about the results of the survey and their insights about the findings and the trends they reveal. Angelo is global leader of Protiviti's technology audit and advisory practice. His specific areas of concentration include technology risk management, cybersecurity, IT compliance, internal audit, and automation. Angelo has more than 18 years of experience in all facets of internal controls and frequently works with CIOs, CISOs, CAEs, and other leaders to mature their technology risk management and audit capabilities. Lindsay is a leader in Protiviti's IT, internal audit, and financial advisory practice. She has over 16 years of extensive experience with a focus in audit, consulting, and project management. She has managed and executed numerous projects related to internal controls and rationalizations, Sarbanes-Oxley, SOC 2, NIST and HIPAA regulatory compliance, pre-implementation reviews, automation, and information security governance assessments. Angelo, thanks for joining me today.
Kevin, it's always great to be part of your show. I feel like I'm a veteran already.
Thanks very much. And Lindsay, it's great to speak with you for our first time. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. Excited to be here.
So Lindsay, we're going to bring you right into the deep end of the pool and ask you our first question. Cybersecurity is perceived to be the top risk issue by IT audit leaders and teams. And in terms of our scoring, it's not particularly close. Further, among numerous technology risks, so-called next-gen cyber threats appear to present the most significant risk over the next 2 to 3 years. What do these findings say to you about the state of cybersecurity threats today?
Thanks, Kevin. I think it's indicative of kind of where IT is today, right? IT is constantly changing. It's evolving. Obviously, cybersecurity is on all of our clients' radar, to your point of the survey results as it being a top risk. I think we think of things of ransomware and AI and some of the new technologies that are coming out today that are creating these new risks. So I think from a client perspective, it's on their radars. They know these things are coming. The impact of access and things being put into the cloud, and how safe is our data, and how can it be breached, and if we're breached, how do we recover that data, right? So I think all of these things, they start to snowball almost as we start to think about cyber, what we knew it as 2 to 3 years ago, of a very standard, what is our NIST and what are our protocols, and kind of thinking of those new technologies and how they're transforming that space.
Lindsay, I agree with everything you just said. I found it interesting, actually, how our survey results showed a high level of preparedness around cyber. I don't think you could ever be overly prepared for cyber, but I do think over the last 5 years, organizations have probably spent more money on cybersecurity than ever before. They're obviously seeing a lot of attention to that space. They're building partnerships with providers that they never previously would have thought of working with that strictly do cybersecurity as a managed service. I think it's all good things. I don't think you could ever be overly prepared. I'm excited to see that a lot of organizations that I at least work with now include cyber as part of an ongoing audit agenda item, as part of audit committee meetings. They're not just performing one cyber audit a year, but they're performing more regular audits around cyber. So preparedness to me is also indicative that it's an auditable area. There is something to audit and for internal audit to assure around.
Yeah, those are great points, Angelo. We look at audit plans coming up, and even the conversations I'm having with my clients right now as they're focusing on next year, the number one is cybersecurity. And they're like, well, we've audited it. We've audited it 100 different ways, but how can we think about it differently? How do we still provide value? And, how do we become more prepared?
And Angelo, I'm going to circle back to the preparedness and proficiency views on cyber and other risks shortly. But I first want to ask you about AI and generative AI. These areas, along with machine learning, are not viewed by most as posing significant threats today, again, according to the results of our survey. But the threat level ramps up within a 2 to 3 year timeline. Tell us what you're seeing today and what you anticipate will develop in the coming years around AI technologies.
Yeah, I did find it interesting when we got a preview of the results and finalized the results that AI wasn't high on the risk radar list for the next year. But that was based on people's responses in June. And I think if we were to resurvey them now, we would have seen those results climb. And that was indicative from one of the questions where we ask, what do you see as a risk trending over the next 2-3 years? AI was pretty high on the list. I would just say in the last 3 months, many of my clients are starting to introduce and give the power of AI to a lot of their employees, creating chat GPT-like environments. So that is allowing organizations to use generative AI in a more secure manner because the prompts and the responses are going to live within the 4 walls of the organization. So maybe at the time that we asked participants on their views of risk on AI, they didn't think it was so high on the list then, but it is definitely climbing. It's probably going to be the one with the greatest velocity. We are seeing a lot of our internal audit clients come to us right now and ask us about the related risks and what can they be doing to help organizations prepare, because this isn't something that's really auditable at most organizations yet. And I think this is an opportunity for internal audit departments to do more advisory projects, consultative projects, partnering with the business and thinking through the risks around the use of large language models, whether it's data privacy, confidentiality risks related to folks using it as a crutch, maybe over-reliance. That could certainly be a concern. Non-compliance. A lot of the regulatory requirements around the use of generative AI haven't really been fully fleshed out yet, but we have a good feeling that is coming. So I think this is where internal audit departments could help think and devise control frameworks, tailor those frameworks based on the organization's planned use of AI. And there's already a lot of good resources available, such as the NIST released an AI governance framework that could be leveraged, very similar to the NIST cybersecurity framework. There's an AI risk management framework, very robust, a lot of guidance. It might be overwhelming guidance for most to consume, but leveraging that as a tool to help create a more tailored framework that then the organization could align to and work to implement as they also work to implement AI within the organization.
And I can tell you that based on some other research Protiviti is conducting, we are seeing the use of generative AI ramp up in finance organizations and other groups. So, Angelo, I think that aligns exactly to what you're saying. There's just been a lot of growth in the past few months even, and that's going to continue.
Yeah, and I think we're also seeing just about every software vendor that's out there is looking to introduce AI into their platform. So even a lot of the audit-oriented platforms, I can anticipate they're going to think of ways of introducing AI. And I think that's an exciting thing for the community of internal auditors and risk management professionals. We've seen firsthand of the power of AI and how it can really accelerate internal audit and risk management related activities, and having those capabilities be embedded into some of these tools, I think is going to make things a lot more exciting. It's going to allow internal audit departments to do a lot more from a technology audit perspective. No one technology auditor could really know everything. I think it's going to certainly help the planning process. But at the end of the day, teams are still going to need to leverage expertise from other places just to be able to address all of the variety of risks that exist today.
So, Lindsay, I want to switch topics and talk a bit about, let's call it data. data privacy and compliance, data governance and integrity. Those risk areas also stand out in the results of our survey. What types of questions and concerns about data-related areas are you hearing from the companies you work with?
Yeah, I think, in the most recent news within the past 2 weeks, right, we're hearing of data, and especially at MGM and Caesars, and, data being held at ransom, right, and again, goes to our cybersecurity question a little bit earlier. But I think understanding the impacts to big data, understanding the quality of the data, the privacy around it, being able to make sure that that data is secure. To Angelo's point, there's a lot of platforms, there's a lot of vendors. Data is moving between, constantly between vendors, interfacing between each other's. How are we keeping the data secure? Right? We have regulations and compliance that we have to be aware of, GDPR, HIPAA in the health industry. So thinking through, a lot of the clients are coming in and how do we make sure that that data is being secure? I think the other big piece of too is what is the integrity of that data and making sure that that data is governed appropriately. Who has access to that data? How is that data being retained? How do we prevent loss of data, right? So if it is held or we have to be able to recover that, I think it's becoming more at the forefront of being able to make sure that that data is recoverable and usable in the event of a cyber breach or even just a data loss. Angelo, anything that you're seeing kind of with your clients?
Yes, there definitely seems to be a lot of focus on the whole notion of privacy by design. So making sure privacy is considered as part of every project, especially any type of major development, or we're building technology, or we're introducing a new business process. Having privacy be part of the overall methodology really helps then later ensure we're in compliance with the relevant laws and regulations.
Really interesting. Thank you both. So, Angela, I want to circle back to what I previously mentioned and you raised around organizational preparedness and technology audit group proficiency. Cybersecurity is perceived as the top technology threat, as we talked about before, but our results indicate organizations and IT audit groups are reasonably well prepared to handle it, as they report to us in our study. Conversely, we see more troubling gaps between threat and preparedness levels in areas such as third parties and vendors, transformations and system implementations, and IT talent management. So there are gaps there, whereas there are not so much gaps when it comes to cybersecurity. Do those trends surprise you?
The survey results did surprise me at first initially as it related to third-party risk management and that not being an area where organizations feel prepared. But I reminded myself that we have a wide audience base that completes our survey. We're not having strictly Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies complete our survey that have more mature third-party risk management programs. And I'm a little bit biased because I tend to work with a lot of Fortune 500s that do have relatively mature third-party risk management capabilities. I think the vast majority of other companies, it's a struggle to have dedicated focus to all of their third parties, inventorying them all, assessing them from a risk perspective, engaging them, having them complete and respond to questionnaires around their security posture, validating all of those procedures. That needs resources that I know many organizations do not have. So that when I started thinking about it from the perspective of a mid-sized company or maybe a non-Fortune 500 based organization, it didn't surprise me. And it's unfortunate that these risks pertain to all companies, regardless of size. So how do you right-size a third-party risk management program given resource limitations, funding limitations, et cetera? When it came to security, that's where there has been a lot of focus and a lot of upskilling. I don't think you'll ever have someone that could address all aspects of cyber, even within Protiviti. We're very focused on building capabilities across the various domains of cyber and building a specialist in attack and pen, which is one aspect of security, is very different than building specialists around identity and access management or more defensive aspects of security, such as vulnerability management and patch management. I think organizations feel good about what they have done. They're patting themselves on the back. But as we know, when it comes to security, it's going to be a journey. You can never, you should, and you shouldn't ever feel comfortable, because the landscape is always evolving and maturing, and the threat actors are just getting a lot more sophisticated with the techniques that they're using. So our survey provides a lot of averages, and it considers averages across all industries, all organization types. And I think it's a data point, but I think there is value in organizations on their own assessing their perceived threat level as it relates to a variety of risks, then assessing their organizational preparedness, and finally their IT audit team's proficiency, because that could help reveal areas where internal audit should not just perform an audit in an area where the business unit does not feel prepared. It often takes a shoot the wounded approach to the audit, where internal audit also wears a very important advisory role in their responsibility. Where capabilities are less mature, where our surveys may have suggested less preparedness, that is where internal audit should perform more of an advisory role, a partnership with the business to help perhaps create a control framework, help understand current state, help define a target state that is reasonable based on the risks facing the company, as opposed to a more traditional audit with issues, levels of risk, action items, target remediation dates, et cetera. You should still obviously do some of that as part of an assurance engagement, but I think the framing is important. And then finally, really understanding gaps between proficiency and risk level help an organization understand where they may need to seek out some external expertise.
Thanks, Angelo. And this is a great time to plug our report, Navigating a Technology Risk-Filled Horizon, from Protiviti and the IIA. And that report is available on our respective websites. And I would imagine for companies interested in having the survey questions applied to their own organization, we can certainly help with that. Lindsay, I also wanted to raise the topic here of the use of technology tools, as well as adoption barriers. Two areas stand out in our results. First, collaboration tools are being used in a majority of technology audit groups, which is great to see. Second, technology audit groups that employ data analytics tools appear to be more proficient in their ability to handle key tech risks that those groups not using such tools are able to handle. What are your thoughts on how these tools, collaboration, data analytics, and others are being employed today?
I think from a data analytics perspective, the tools that are being leveraged, things such as Power BI and Tableau, are really allowing audit teams to get more insights into their data. They're able to use, right, there's a lot of data out there coming from multiple sources. And these tools are allowing teams to identify where there's outliers. Maybe there's potential fraud cases that the data is going to show them. It's giving you the ability to actually look at more, right? So you're able to look at full populations, and instead of sample-based testing where you might be only getting a snippet of information. So I think the way the tools are used today are going to continue to evolve into audits, more continuous monitoring. We see a lot of audit shops wanting to, I don't want to audit a point in time. I want to be able to continue to see the data on a monthly basis, or understand real time and provide that value back to the business and say, these are the things we're seeing as a snapshot in time. Obviously, there, as we talk to clients, there's budget constraints, right? Not all clients can adopt all tools. So I think it's important for clients to understand what's best for them. Angelo referenced earlier the size of our clients. They're not all Fortune 500, but being able to integrate some of these tools do help, clients save costs and save time as they're trying to look at more data and cover more audit areas.
And I've heard, I think, Angela, you mentioned this before. I think I would imagine one area to make sure to explore is whether the organization has access to an enterprise license on a particular tool or technology that maybe the audit group is not using today, but should explore using.
That's right. I think there's a lot of opportunity for technology audit teams to take a look at what's available to them already. In many cases, the tech audit group or broader internal audit group will be able to benefit from an enterprise license so that they don't have to acquire some new license or software that adds cost within their department. Many of these tools are fairly agnostic. They work across business functions. Alteryx, Power BI, the whole Microsoft Power Platform, which we know many of our clients generally have access to, just to name a few. And there's a lot of good training around these types of platforms as well that help everyone upskill themselves with a very well-defined training curriculum.
Some tools that may not be as readily available, but that we're seeing that are upcoming more, right? We're looking at, they might not have hit the top of the list that respondents are using, but they are, upping the scale. Tools such as process mining and RPA. Obviously AI, we talked about ChatGPT already, but I think those tools are going to start to click up more as we see kind of, surveys in years out.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you both again for joining me. I have one final question, Angelo. I'll toss this one to you, but Lindsay, feel free to chime in on it as well. In taking a high-level view of our research results and key findings, what do you see as the opportunities for technology audit groups to improve their capabilities and how they support management and their enterprises overall?
Yeah, I would say at the highest level, technology audit groups need to be focused on the business and the business priorities to really understand what are their emerging risks or what are the risks that they do not feel comfortable in addressing today. This is, though, going to require major upskilling and uplifting within the technology audit organization, which we know could run really lean at many companies. But when you consider all of the domains that a technology auditor needs to know about, whether it's cloud, data governance and privacy, we talked about AI, cybersecurity in itself just can go really, really deep, providing advice on major strategic initiatives. There's just a plethora of skills that a technology auditor is somewhat expected to know these days, and I just don't know if that's realistic. So I think the internal audit group or the overall organization really needs to allocate time and support the upskilling of the technology auditor, but also recognize that no one technology auditor can do it all. I think it's important for organizations to foster a culture of innovation and give individuals some room to fail, give them that freedom that you're not always going to hit a home run. Sometimes a bunch of base hits are good enough, but it's only through that trial and error and repetition do you start gaining success and using some of the enabling technology that we were talking about earlier. Finally, I would say we're in the business of relationship building. I think that's probably the most important of all. And maybe working remotely the past 2-3 years, some organizations are persisting with it, may have caused us to lose that focus on just relationship building. So we need to maintain a focus of engaging with management, engaging with other stakeholders to really understand their expectations, to understand what keeps them up at night, to be able to provide insights, to be able to provide recommendations that truly add value. Really, relationship building is what helps someone in the audit field really know what is potentially a top risk and how can they help. I think we can't, at times with working remote, you're not able to walk the halls. You're not able to have any cooler side conversations. So relationship building, I think I would almost make that a number one focus because we've lost a little focus on that. And that is what sometimes helps us provide value in our roles as technology auditors is making sure there's an open line of communication, make sure there's a mutual level of trust and respect for one another. Sometimes folks, when they hear an audit is coming their way, it's easy to put their defenses up. But if we could come to it from a perspective of wanting to help add value, wanting to justify spend and budgets for potentially next year to invest in the capabilities we need, that is really what auditors are trying to do at the end of the day is better help the organization better mitigate risk and drive value in the recommendations that they're providing. Lindsay, I don't know if you would add anything.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Angelo. I think relationships are key. And I think if we're going to want to understand what's happening in the business, I think having those open relationships and that open dialogue is going to be a lot easier and more comfortable as you get into the hard conversations than surprising somebody on an audit and saying, hey, tell me everything that's wrong, right? So I think it's definitely key to maintain that value with management as we kind of go into, the future audits and understanding.
So Kevin, I know we didn't necessarily survey on how people feel about their relationships today. Maybe that's something we include in next year's survey, but that I think is loud and clear. And also what was loud and clear is just the need for upskilling. And the reality is no organization, no internal audit function is likely going to have every skill they need. That is why they need to have some good partners available to them, whether they're within the business or outside of the business, a third party. I think all that makes good sense.
That was a great discussion, and I want to thank Angelo and Lindsay for joining me to discuss the results of our survey. My key takeaway is that technology auditors have a lot going on. They're dealing with cyber threats, the emergence of AI into the business mainstream, data privacy, governance and compliance, third-party risk management, and much more. We know they need the right talent, skills, and technology tools to meet their high expectations and excel in their roles in today's challenging business climate. For more information, I encourage you again to please download and read Navigating a Technology Risk-Filled Horizon, the report produced by Protiviti and the IIA on the results of the latest Global Technology Audit Risks Survey. And finally, I encourage you to please subscribe to our Powerful Insights podcast series and review us wherever you get your podcast content.